jokes they didn't quite hear. Frosted window panes and cheap champagne, a face appears. And anything could happen in these cathedrals we roam, where shadow people dance and trade their glance and walk home alone. Roosevelt Hotel, watching Midtown empty out and a kiss of farewell. They say we come from nothing and to nothing we'll return, and in between is gravity and bridges left to burn.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's having a fantastic long weekend. Give me just one moment while I get everything kind of set up and good to go here. Send out the tweet that I'm live. There we go. So if there is anyone hanging out, if you just want to type in the chat how everything sounds, if it all sounds okay, that would be cool, and we can get started here.
So many things. I guess what I love most about
Boom.
her is just
Okay.
one thing.
Get that in there.
Large
check, see, make sure everything sounds okay. Close that down. All right, so for anyone who is new here, welcome. Basically what we do here is we take a look at the markets. We use trade ideas to scan through the world of stocks, where I try to find a few that work, or a few that I believe will work, and then we plug into the trade ideas robot and have that kind of auto traded based off some entry algorithms that I go through. So if it is a kind of back-to-back stream where if I do one tomorrow, for example, I'll go through what we looked at yesterday, but it has been a while since the last stream, so we'll just kind of get started and go from there. Since it's generally a weekend stream, so one thing I'd like to do is on the weekend not only go through just the SPY, but I like to take a look at the other markets as well. So we'll start that, kind of let people trickle in here. So SPY, and let me get my pen up here. So interesting week last week. Intraday ranges were abysmal. Made it for harder trading, more choppy trading. Still came out fine. 4 to 5 days positive, 1 day flat, 1 negative. So again, not the greatest in the world, but your goal is generally when the market's choppy like this is just to stay alive and do okay, and when they pick up again. So if you look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let me zoom in on this a bit more for you. All right, if we look at the ranges of the candles here, including the wicks, you can see that pretty tiny, and actually got kind of smaller and smaller and smaller as the day went on. So just wasn't really a whole lot to write home about. Very interesting that we gapped down again. We were looking at this base here, and I was kind of talking to you guys saying I don't think the market will make it that easy just to bounce like this and push higher, which it didn't, right? We popped up a little bit, we gapped down, we sold off. Everybody thought the end of the world was coming in through here, and then ever since then, just kind of a slow, steady grind higher. So there's no reason to think that we're just going to kind of reverse dramatically here, but I could see some sideways movement like this before we either move higher or lower, barring any obvious large news event or anything like that. So just how I like to dial down is I like to look at the market, any of the majors, right? So if we're looking at USO, right, we can see, okay, oil has not been helping this rally. The past 3 days of oil have been down, right? And we noticed that the market was going up. And we take a look at financials. Again, I don't really make any trading decisions off of this, but I think it's silly not to understand kind of the road in front of you, the obstacles that could be in your way. So although my entry and exit criteria are going to be about the same, it's just nice to look to see kind of what's going on around you. So the XLF here, we had a gap down, kind of like the SPY, and a slow grind higher. So this part here looks a lot like the SPY, but if you look at relative to where we are at highs versus the SPY, you can still see that the financials are relatively weak. And I'm sure, as always, the Qs have been leading, right? So the SPY gap down here, sold off, retraced slowly, and made a slight new high, whereas you can see the new high that the Qs have made of pretty dramatically higher. So financials lagging a bit, oil down a lot, and then with the Qs here, technology is kind of the real standout winner. So again, I don't think that will affect kind of what I'm looking at all, but I think it's really important to know this. If I'm going to go long, it makes sense to take a look at the tech space, right? As we're relatively strong there and relatively weak somewhere else. So let's kind of take a look, and we'll go through the lists from Friday here, and I'll show you what I was looking at, and we'll see what we're going to keep on the list or not. But first, I'm just going to do my little regular speech to kind of explain to people what's going on, how I trade particularly. So this is Trade Ideas. If you're new to it, there's a link in description to save yourself a couple bucks if you're interested. What I do here is I take these scans that are custom built scans that are kind of looking for what I like to look for in the market, which in this particular market is a lot of overbought and oversold, topping tails, bottoming tails, support and resistance types plays. Not much of a breakout or momentum trader myself, but I will take all of these stocks as we'll scan through. I'll pick kind of the top 10 long, top 10 short, and I'll add them into this list. So if you go into Trade Ideas, account management, which you can get from the main page, and symbol lists, you can build your own symbol list here. So when I say I'm going to add something to a list, I'll be typing it in one of my short lists or one of my long lists. From then, I take an alert window. Let's just do yesterday. And I'll feed these into an alert list. And then inside this alert window, it will only be looking at those kind of top 10 long, top 10 shorts, but at the same time, it's only going to show them to me if specific entry criteria is met. And that's going to depend on what I want to play, whether I'm playing, a more breakout play or more of a pullback play or something like that. It's going to kind of take a look and say, okay, well, you liked... say CDNS short, and okay, now that you like CDNS short, it has done everything you want to see on an intraday basis, so here it is. So not only is it going to narrow everything down on a daily basis, then it will narrow everything down on an intraday basis. Now if you're a discretionary trader, you're good here. You can just watch these and then use your own eye and then make the trades accordingly. I'm a auto trader. So what I'll do is I'll feed these into the bot, which links to my prop firm software. And as these things come through, they'll get traded automatically with entry and exit criteria, stop losses, that type of thing that I program in myself. So it's basically how I'm going to shrink the whole world of trading down to 20 symbols and filter those 20 symbols down to only things that I want to observe intraday. So that's kind of a synopsis of how I trade, so I hope that makes sense. As always, if there are any questions, there's a little kind of chat box that I'll put here that's to the left or underneath your window, and you can simply just type whatever you want, and I'll answer them as I scan. And then at the end, if there are a lot of questions, we just hang out and kind of shoot the shit and have a Q&A. Pretty transparent. Pretty open to sharing any of the scans that you see, as long as there's no like complicated custom formulas behind it or anything like that. So if we take a look here, we're going to look at the short side of the market first. I try to do equally weighted with 10 and 10 to make sure that if we do have a choppy day, I can play both sides. But say if the market is trending downwards, my long positions will get cut, and then hopefully the short positions are going to ride out. So I generally go for at least 2-to-1 on my trades. I sometimes try to eke that out to 3 or 4-to-1 depending on the price action, but definitely 2-to-1 on this. So the hope is between the entry algorithms, the stocks that I've picked, and having the bot emotionally robotically trade them, I bet 60% win rate, 2-to-1 risk reward, and then just rinse and repeat. So kind of what you're seeing going on right now will be my workday. And then tomorrow I'll observe the bot until about lunchtime, just to learn whatever I can from its trading, and try to improve with it and see where I could change things around. And then I'm usually off for the day, and then come back after the market closes and we do this all again. If I've got the time and I feel like yammering, then I'll come stream. And the best way to find out if I'm streaming is just at Bonpower, which is my Twitter, and I'll just post there usually when I'm live, a half hour before I go live, that type of thing. So if we go through these shorts, I'll quickly try to let you know which ones triggered and which ones didn't. I don't have the exact entries and exits. I didn't save them from Friday, but I'll kind of eyeball it and let you know. So backs, we were looking at just kind of overextended move, triggered and sold off right away, so there was no entry there at all. CCI was a fair bit boring. It actually triggered short in this area, and then you can see it just went sideways all day. So not interested in that anymore. We're going to leave that off the list because it has this kind of bottoming tail hammer there. CDNS, we've been watching this for a while. I'm going to keep this one back on watch. Basically what we've been looking at on this one is that we have this kind of, if I can draw a straight line, this trend line here, and it's up 7 days in a row right into that trend line, and we got some intraday resistance kind of up in this area here, so we're going to leave this one back on. I did get a trigger in this candle, sold down a little bit, came back up. When we sold down again, I moved the stop down just at highs here, and then it came and very, very small stop, damn near break even on that one. Delta, we've been adding this because it's kind of hitting this, that was a little better, this downtrend line here. And again, up a huge amount into it. We're hoping for just a one-day pullback. Again, for myself, I'm an intraday trader, so I'm in and out of these things within the day. If you were, a little more inclined to hold, maybe you take off some if they're working and cut the ones that aren't and hold a bit longer. But for me, I'm just looking for one-day snapbacks, and this delta is still in play here, so I'm going to leave this one on as well. The other thing is I usually do a fairly decent job of, there's nothing there on DDD. I usually do a fairly decent job of posting these lists if I don't get a chance to show you guys. So you can keep an eye on that as well. This KHC, I put on a list here. We were up a lot into this kind of resistance area. It's still holding true, but I really didn't like the price action. Again, I think I got a short in here somewhere, and you can see just nothing all day. KO, I'm going to put back on here. This was kind of good, I guess. We got short in through here yesterday, pulled back nicely. I took some of my profits out here near lows, and then just kind of chopped around, but closed pretty near the low, and I get out the bots program to make sure I'm out of everything by the end of the day. So I usually like to sell in parts when I have a decent little profit, and then just let the rest run for the rest of the day and kind of see what happens. We'll leave that one on. Monster was the standout winner. I'm going to try that, go back into that well again. With Monster, we're just up a lot into this type of area here where we had this big sell-off before. We got short in through here and had a pretty decent little sell-off of, I think, 40 or 50 cents on that one. And then kind of chopped around, and I think the robot got me out like in this area at the end of the day. So it's a pretty good one on that. We'll leave that one in because I kind of like the topping tail that took place there. MO, I'm going to leave this one in, although we did get a trigger right in through here. It's kind of the same thing as a lot of these. You can almost see the choppy nature of the market in these stocks, which is why I'm being a little bit more defensive on a little bit quicker on some of my position, and then more defensive on the rest, where we had a little bit of a sell-off. When we approached lows here, I got out a little chunk, and then we just kind of chopped around all day after that. Starbucks, there was no trigger, but I think I noted that this area, this area was resistance up here, so we're going to leave Starbucks back on as well. So that was the short side, and you can see we're able to leave 6 symbols on the list, so we just need to find 4 more for the short side. So we'll take a look at this list I have here, I'm going to flip, which is just a simple scan that I just asked Trade Ideas, you know, show me liquid stocks, or show me stocks that are, I think it's 1 million shares about a day on average, or at least the last trading day they did 1 million shares. Fairly volatile, so I think I have an average true range type situation on them, and that are outside of their Bollinger Band, so technically overbought. And then I'll use my eye to filter them down. So if anyone is interested in what I'm looking at here when I'm cycling through these, first I look at the daily chart, because again, I'm trying to predict pretty much the next day's price action. So if I'm going to do that, it makes sense to obviously not be super zoomed in on the daily chart and look at the 1 minute chart or something like that. So we'll look at the daily first, and then I'll move up to the 5. And mostly here I'm looking at intraday support and resistance areas. And then I'm also looking at if it's going to fit my risk profile. And for me, I'm risking 20 cents, 25 cents or so to make at least double that. So, you know, I'm going to try to risk, say, 20 cents to make 40, or 25 to make 50, somewhere in that area. And I do that so that it makes my sizing a lot easier. I know simply, you know, if I take with 20 shares, for example, if you take 1,000 shares, and that's $200 risk. And as long as the liquidity is there, then you know you're going to get roughly that risk, and then double that in return if it works out. And then from there, I'm over to here, which is kind of an underutilized windows in Trade Ideas, a single stock window, where I have this kind of sorted with some just information that I can glance at. I can see, okay, what was the volume? How is that volume related to the average, right? So a relative volume of 1 is average. Anything under that's kind of subpar. Anything over that is obviously higher than normal. I can see the average true range. I can see the short float, change since January 1, today's range, float, all this kind of information. So I'm going to look here for 2, and then here for 3, and then if it kind of, there's a check mark here, here, and here, then it will go on the list type of thing. So I hope that kind of helps when I'm just tabbing through what it is that I like to see. And again, if there's any questions, feel free to type them below, and we'll go through that. I think that's probably the most beneficial part of this for most traders, is the kind of the Q&A aspect, where you can say, okay, well, why, you know, look at this stock, well, why not this stock, why the stock you were looking at, and that type of thing. And the other thing I'm obviously going to take a look at is the stocks that I already have on the list, and make sure that I'm not overlapping with industry averages. Like I already have Delta Airlines, for example, so I'm not going to be looking too closely on American Airlines or United Airlines or anything like this, because then I'm just kind of double or triple dipping into the same type of situation. The CSX is interesting. Kind of looks like the SPY does, but a little bit more overdone than that. I think I'm going to pass on it because it does look too similar to the market. I want to make sure that the stocks that I'm trading, as best as I can, are slightly different from what the market looks like. Because if everything that I'm trading is just mirroring the market 100%, well, I better just trade the market at that point and save myself the hassle. So I'm hoping for a little better week, volatility-wise would be fantastic. D, I'm gonna put this on a short. We actually had D on long watch in through here, and we actually caught a long on this nice big green candle here earlier in the week. I posted this on Twitter, I believe. I don't know if I had a video of that or not, but ever since then it's run straight up. Makes me think that a small pullback to maybe test the breakout area of either of these lines could be possible. And we had a lot of intraday resistance here where we kept kind of bumping our head. So I'm going to add this one, see if the buyers that are trying to push it up through that area give out. I like the look of CPB here. One of my favorite setups is when a stock, so you had this nice long base here. When a stock breaks down out of that base, pushes up and hits resistance again, quite often you'll get a kind of coil back down to see if there is still strength in through here. So So we got a question here. What about a stock that is overbought or oversold due to news? Does it auto trade or avoid those situations? Well, this particular strategy, it's only going to play what I put in, but how I have the intraday algorithms kind of set up is that I don't want to trade if there is news, and I don't want to trade if there is gaps. So a lot of things that I'll put in the algorithm will basically say, let's use this for example, right? So I noted that we're hitting a bit of resistance here, and we've gone quite a bit to get here, so we may have a slight pullback. So what I'll do, let me zoom in here, is I'll say something to the effect, if you can get kind of a candlestick pattern that I like to see in this area, take a short. At the same time, if you gap down here tomorrow, or if you gap up here tomorrow, or if it, you know, comes here and then runs way down and then pushes way up after that, I don't want either of those scenarios. The only type of scenario I want is either we open somewhere in this area and then we push either to or through the resistance slightly and then start to show weakness. So it's very easy to go in trade ideas and say, okay, well, if it's gapping, ignore it. Because if it's gapping, then it's probably doing that because of some type of news. Yeah, so I want to sit out. So personally, with this particular setup, I want to avoid it entirely. And there's very easy ways within trade ideas to do that. I do have some algorithms that are fully automated that scan the entire market, and they look to fade news pops. Those, however, I'd say aren't for the weak at heart. You have to trade them very, very small and very cautiously to worry about things like pops or halts, news events, slippage, that type of thing when you're playing around news. So I hope that made sense. Again, follow-up questions, fire them in there. If I just rambled and didn't really get to what you wanted, let me know. But basically, these particular setups, I adamantly want to avoid news. So I've just told trade ideas, if there's a gap or if there's insane volume coming in or something to that effect, just ignore it and move on. Which is the main reason that I'll put on 10 longs and 10 shorts, because with 10 longs and 10 shorts, I'll probably get 5-ish actual trades tomorrow. Because the rest of them simply will not, won't trigger, right? They won't kind of help with that respect. So that's why it's very important to make sure that you're not really looking at too much there. So alright, so like I mentioned before with this AAL, I like the look of this, but it looks exactly like Delta, obviously, so I'm just going to ignore this entirely because it's basically like just going in twice on the same stock, right? There is also, you know, there's ways to run news momentum strategies as well. There's a lot of those around where it will look for an increase in volume and a big push, and then kind of look to get in on those. Again, just not really my thing. I'm not really a momentum news-driven trader. Again, I'm the kind of guy where I want to come in and I want to risk 20 cents to make 40 to 60 cents, and I want to do that 3 or 4 times a day, and I want to do that with a 50-50, right, at least 50% win rate, and that's about it, right? So you're risking $100 to make $200, and you're trying to do that a handful of times a day, and you're trying to do that with hopefully up to a 60% win rate type of thing. So we're going to move on to another scanner. We've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we got room for 2 more shorts here. And we're going to take a look here. And this is basically just a scan that I built within Trade Ideas. This one's a little bit harder to share. That just looks for topping tails, right? So I call it middle finger because, you know, they call it the middle finger of the gods, right? Where you get a stock that's kind of basing sideways and it pops up and then slams back down the same day. So you have a big topping tail. And that's what we're going to take a look at. Again, overbought, oversold, or hitting support and resistance with a large topping tail. Like this YUMC, which I'm going to add. If we scroll back here on, or scroll in on the daily here, you can see every time we try to break up and over this area, we get punched back down each time. And it was actually pretty dramatic on last Friday. So we're going to add this to the list to see if we get some momentum here. Brian Shannon from Alpha Trends, who if you don't follow, kind of what are you doing? He's a great technician. He always says from failed moves comes fast moves, and I really like that saying, and I think it holds very true in the market. So we're going to follow through where if something looked like it should have been a good breakout and then didn't break out, we're going to try to see if we can get the other side of that. This, I passed it quickly, but this WB actually looks pretty interesting, but for a short, just because we had this gap up and a push higher, and then a bit of a failure, and then they tried to push it back up again, and then a topping tail. But between here and here is about $1, so there's just no way. Yeah, well, not scale out. I guess I should. I'm always bad at this. I should read the questions. The question is, you set the bot to scale out some on the way up. So, essentially, what I do is the bot puts out enters the position, puts out a stop, puts out a target. So, you know, say it was a short here, it would put out a stop, and then it would put out a profit target. And what I'll do when I'm around is I'll just take that profit target and I'll cancel it and then replace it with only 80% of the position, right? So again, if I'm trading 1,000 shares, again, I don't like to talk size or numbers or anything here, but just for simplicity's sake, if I'm trading 1,000 shares, what I'll do is I'll say, okay, well, if you get down there, sell or cover 800, and then just hold 200 with the initial stop still in place for those 200. And then get me out some at the rest of the day. And quite often what you'll get is if you watch a lot of the videos, you'll see that it comes down, and if it gets that, quite often it will just kind of chop around for the rest of the day, because this probably happened in the morning when the volatility was high, and then just chops around. But 1 or 2 a week, I seem to just get one that kind of trends all day. And that 1 or 2 a week could be, an extra 2, 3, 4 points, right? So on that 200 shares, if you get 2 points, an extra 400 on just that small little bit. So that's generally how I like to look at it. That's just, again, a personal preference. Some people like to kind of go all in on here's where I want to get in and here's where I want to get out. Some people don't like profit targets at all, and what they'll do is they'll say, okay, well, get me in, and then put out a profit target or put out a trailing stop and then just trail it until it reverses. And then there's some people who will just put out the trade and just put out the stop, let it go all day, and then if it goes all day, great. If it goes a little bit and chops around, fine. And if it stops out, they've got that protective stop. So very personal preference type of thing. I'm going to put in this INOS. And this, I think, might be our last one. We've got some clear kind of resistance up here. We tried to take a run at the last few days. Put in a pretty big topping tail, kind of reversal hammer in here. So I'm going to take a look at it and say, okay, well, there's a lot of intraday support near this 46 area. So the bot will take a look to see either if we can short up in this area or if we kind of break below this area is what I'll tell it to do. So that is our 10 short. And again, don't worry, we'll go through a bit of a summary of the list when we're all done. And again, more Q&A when we're done, or if there's any questions along the way, let me know. We'll take a look at the longs here. I'll show what I'm going to add back, what there was any trades on Friday. CAR, I'm going to add back in. We have a possible double bottom forming. I think double bottoms are actually pretty rare. But anyway, just some support kind of in this area down here after a big down move. So if we get a little bit of strength, I think there could be some short covering. With CAR, we got a long right in through here. And had a nice little up move, didn't take any profits on it. We pulled back and then kind of ran for the rest of the day at the end. So decent profit at that at the end of the day. Roy, I did get your email. I was going to take a look at that scan after this. If you want to do it live, we can take a look at it then. I understand if you want to kind of keep it on the down low because it is something that you worked on. And what was that last one I was looking at? IONS. I spelled that wrong. IONS. Update. Yeah, so I did see that. I was going to look at it kind of in private after this and just email you the feedback. If you want to take a look at it in front of everyone, you can go ahead, but then just know it's out there. HUN, I'm going to add back to the list. I just kind of like the fact that this is pulled back pretty dramatically into this support area here. Which we had resistance here, support here, and support here. We did get a trigger in through here on Friday. And then little tiny move up, got out some near highs, and then just chop around. Privately check. Yeah, okay, I'll check it after this and I'll send you something a little bit later. No worries. MDCO, I'm going to add that one back in as well. Just looking for a kind of a gap fill, and it's getting dangerously close here. Again, another trigger on this in through this area. Pretty decent move on that, but that was only, near 50 cents there. But again, you're noticing a lot of this when the charts I go through. You're not alone. I noticed that as well. RL, I'm going to keep putting this on because this is just overdone to the nth. Simple oversold play on that one. SRPT, getting down to this kind of trend line. support there. And we had a nice little bottom happen here around 29.50. So I'll take a look for the bot to see if it can get anywhere in that type of area. Okay, so from the list yesterday, we were able to keep 5. So we're looking for 5 more. And again, I'll be adding them over here on a different screen. Again, for anyone that doesn't know, you can take pretty much any window and trade ideas. You can right click, hit configure, hit flip, and then OK, and it will take the same window and it will just flip it. So whereas before I was looking for stocks that did the proper amount of volume, proper amount of liquidity and volatility above the Bollinger Band, simply by doing that, now I'm looking for stocks. Again, it's smart enough not to change the liquidity and volatility indicators, but what it will change is the direction. So instead of being above the top end of the Bollinger Band, now it's going to be below the bottom end of the Bollinger Band. And again, I got an email on the weekend, saying, oh, well, I hear you talking about Bollinger Bands. Do you like this indicator? Do you believe in that kind of stuff? And the answer is no. I don't trade off any indicators. You notice that my charts here are super clean. All the entry criteria is based off of price action alone. It's just, however, a way for me to filter stocks, right? A way to say, okay, well, if I want things that are quote-unquote oversold, and I add PBF here. If I want things that are quote-unquote oversold, well, then I have to do that by looking at some sort of a metric, right? So I have different ways to do that. I have a scan that just looks at stocks that are consecutive down. I have stocks that are looking at percentage down. I have stocks that are oversold on an RSI basis as well. And again, it has nothing to do with the fact where I believe that these are good or bad indicators or anything to trade off of. It's more about just sorting the data in a way that I'm thinking that the rest of the world is going to see them, right? The rest of the world is going to take a look and say, okay, well, this thing is outside the Bollinger Bands and it's oversold in the RSI, and however it is that you look at stocks, I want them all to line up and say, okay, this is oversold, so that if we start getting kind of a support rally in my direction, then it's attempt to be some sort of follow through from that. So I hope that makes sense. Again, I know I just sit here and ramble, but you got that little question box below if you want to ask anything. I know at least one time this week I'm going to put together just a traditional type of educational video, which I do a lot of. Again, if you scroll back on the channel at all, you'll see that there's a couple of these live streams. I've done some live trading intraday with the bot, as well as there's some just straight educational videos where I just kind of think of a topic, make a spreadsheet, present that topic, and away you go. So there's a little bit for everyone, I think. So here, instead of the bottoming tail, I'm simply looking at a topping tail. Ideally, I want to see that bottoming tail at support or at resistance or on an oversold stock. I don't really just want to chase momentum. I will look if something looks really, really nice. I'll take a look at that as well. But for me personally, I just can't seem to bring myself to be a momentum trader as hard as I've tried in the past. I like to kind of have my bids waiting for below everything and my offers waiting for above everything, and trade from there. So that's just kind of how I look at it. I'm going to take a look at this LB. I like the fact that we had a bit of a gap up. We've pulled back, and we've held this bottom that we've held here and here. Pulled back up, and now we're just kind of making this ascending triangle type of look. And we have some resistance up in this 50.75. So again, I'll tell trade ideas as long as we open up kind of relatively in the same area, base around relatively in the same area, and push higher, show some strength, then I want to pick some up. So we're going to add in LB here. We got room for 3 more. And the reason I cap out at 10, and this is entirely up to you if you want to pick up trade ideas and start this kind of style of trading based off whatever daily charts you want to see and whatever intraday charts you want to see. Myself, I like to limit them so then I know my absolute kind of worst case. Assuming no horrible black swan event, I know that I'm going to have 10 longs, 10 shorts. I know absolutely worst case scenario, they all trigger and they all stop out. Where if I put on 20 and 20, that kind of absolute risk doubles if I put on 30 and 30, so on and so forth. Now, the odds of all of these things doing the exact same thing at the exact same time that I want is 0.001%, but if anybody's been trading for any length of time, it's always wise to kind of plan for that because it may happen. So that's why I limit both sides, because I don't want 50 symbols to trigger all at once and then 50 symbols to get stopped out at all at once. Again, I put 20 on the list. If I have time tomorrow, I'll come on and do this again. Again, keep an eye on the Twitter, or just hang out here. I always do it right after the market closes. Again, you'll see there's probably between 5 and 7 triggers from this 20 list. So then I know, right? Okay, if I get about 5 trades and I'm risking, I don't know, $100 on every trade, then I know that my kind of ultimate risk is on 90% of scenarios about $500, right? And that if they all work, which hasn't happened yet, I hope it does, it would be triple that because I'm going for between 2 to 1 and 3 to 1 type of deal. Retailers. I'm seeing a lot of retailers come through on the bottoming tail list, which is interesting. They've been a little bit beat up recently, so could be interesting. I'm going to add THC here to the list. We've got nice support in through this area. We've got a bit of a downtrend, but a nice kind of hammer candle here at this support that we've had before. So I'm going to keep an eye here. I think if we can kind of break out over this trend line, it might want to take a run. Run at 18 anyway. Now is probably the time where I do a generic, I am not a registered anything, I'm just some guy on the internet, and if you listen to me, why are you listening to some guy on the internet type of thing. I just see there's some YouTubers that put that there. I'm up here in Canada, so you'd have to come get me. But I always just like to say that every now and then so I can point to it later. Yeah, a lot of retailers have been beaten up recently, but they strong kind of bottoming tails in with them. You'll notice I'm skipping a lot of them because, as I said before, if I just end up throwing 30 retailers on here, then the retail industry goes up tomorrow and I look like a genius, or it goes down tomorrow and I look like an idiot. So I want to split up sectors as well as stocks to try to make sure that I'm not kind of all in on one thing. So this scan down here we're going to look at next. We've got 1, 2, 3. We got 8, so we got room for 2 more. This is simply comparing the close and the high of the day. So basically I want to see things here, and this might be a little bit more momentum type oriented, but I just want to see things that have closed at or near their high of day. Just a simple little scan to look for continuation tomorrow. Man, BERY has just been on fire from 50 to 60. It's crazy. I'm going to add this Tiffany on. I know I just made a giant speech about not adding too many retailers, but every single scan I've gone through tonight for my long scans, Tiffany has been on. So I kind of just have to listen to it at some point, I think. It's like it's beating me on the head and telling me to put it on the long list. And if we're here tomorrow, you'll see that it triggered and stopped out. Just wait. Calling it right now. The other thing, I guess, if you guys are new to trade ideas, these colored sections are pre and post market. So I was looking at Etsy there, and it kind of looked interesting. It's basing after a nice gap up, but then I see that it's kind of popped already in post market. So not too interested there. So that's why I keep that up. It's not because I believe that pre-market or post-market trading can actually indicate a lot, because I don't think it can. There's not enough volume. But I want to know, because I'm telling the system, if you gap, ignore it. I want to make sure that I just want to make sure that I'm looking at it with my eyes. So if I see a gap, I know just to leave it off, right? That it's kind of a wasted slot of, say, my top 10 longs, top 10 shorts type of deal. And then another thing that is I believe that this scanning process, again, this is, my almost my entire workday you're seeing here, but I believe the scanning process, even as a discretionary trader who maybe you just trade gaps, I still think this is big, because I'm learning a lot just by taking a look at here, where I've noticed that we found our shorts by only going through about half the list and being fine. But the longs, however, are becoming harder and harder to find. Might mean that we're a bit overextended on the upside if I'm trying to find, if I'm having a hard time finding things to buy. Maybe not, but however, I'm just going to keep an eye anyway. So this particular scan here is something that I just stole from @TodayTrader. You should give a follow on Twitter and tell him I said hi. Who works with trade ideas. He's a good friend, and it's a simple, some liquidity, some volatility indicators, but basically just sorting the entire market by a short float percentage, just to kind of see things that are high in short interest. Again, Weight Watchers, I don't know if you guys remember, but way back here we took a long on it, and God, I wish I held some, but just an intraday trader, so in and out. But just a nice little list. It's not really any sort of pattern recognition, but what it is just saying, okay, these things have the potential to squeeze if and when they get going, so I should keep an eye on them, see if there's any of them that are setting up interestingly at all. I think I'm going to add this XON on. We've had this on before. I think we had it on in here, and we got a little pop out of it here. I just like a big strong move and a pullback, and now it's kind of hitting the kind of resistance area there. So a nice test on the backside of resistance is pretty cool. And as well, it's got a fairly decent short float of about 30%. Can't ever complain with that. Right? 30% short float. If they start moving, people can start getting a little bit antsy and hitting the cover button, which would be fantastic for us. But So again, we're getting close here. We got one more long. We'll go through it all, and then we'll do a little Q&A. So whatever anyone's got, let me know. I'm going to add Lumber Liquidators on here as well. Simple bull flag. Nice strong move, and then kind of a tight sideways base with some clear support here in this 2950 area. So I'll tell the bot if we can get long in that area on some showing of strength with a 30% short float. I think it would be pretty interesting. And it's only did half the amount of volume it did yesterday, which was still 1 million. So liquidity enough. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I went too far somehow. So I guess we'll have to remove the one that I like the least on our review here. So these lists down here are simple. If I configure them and I go into symbol lists, you can see that it says only the following list and short, right? So these aren't really scans. They're basically just pulling from the lists that I showed you how to make over at account management. So with that, we will take a look here and just kind of cycle through the short. I do this for a couple reasons. A, just a nice little summary for anyone who's watching, but for myself, this is where I'll notice if I make typos. This is where I'll notice if something doesn't look the way I want, or maybe doesn't have enough volume. It's kind of just a second look from there. So, and it looks like, yeah, I did do one extra long, so I'll take something out there that I might not like the best. So CDNS, we've had this on for a few days. Simple overbought play, nice little trend line, and a reversal tail at it. CPB, gap down, came up to close the gap and some, and a nice little topping tail there. DuPont, we got a nice breakout on this 4 or 5 days ago, and it's just been running ever since, showing a bit of exhaustion, I guess, up near 81. Delta, basically just a trend line here. Horribly drawn. That ends here, and a nice strong move up to it. Again, just playing the support, playing the resistance. IONS, same kind of look as Delta. KO, just straight overdone on this one. Just basically looking for a little snapback on that topping tail. Monster, same kind of thing. These things are going to move somewhat in tandem, so I'm going to have to keep an eye on that. But the same type of move where this is just a bit overdone with a couple topping tails. All right, we've got 2 here. MO, just kind of coming back to a breakdown area. We broke down about here, and we've got a pretty strong move back to that. So again, just playing moves into support, moves into resistance. Starbucks, again, same, just a little bit overdone. And YUMC, nice topping tail there. Every time it gets above that, say, 38-ish area, sellers come back in pretty strongly. So we're just going to see if maybe at some point the buyers just give up trying to push it over there, and we get a nice sell-off. Car, possible double bottom forming, was a pretty good trader on Friday. HUN, nice pullback to an area where it's bounced before, and a bunch of bottoming tails down there. LB, we're looking at this base break after this pullback to possibly move higher. Lumber Liquidators, simple bull flag on a push up. MDCO has sold pretty dramatically from 59 down to 40 to fill a gap, and you can see the candles are getting smaller and smaller on the way down. Could signal that something's coming up. PBF, I'm actually going to remove this one because we said we were a bit overdone. We had one too many long, so I'm going to remove that one just because looking at it now, it doesn't look like it moves enough to make it worthwhile. It seems very improbable that I would get my 40-50 cent move, so we'll just take that one out. Ralph Lauren, just overdone, just straight overdone. It's been a long time with this one. SRPT, pulling back to where it's bounced before, nice little bottoming tail. THC, It's holding this base after this gap up pretty well. Tiffany's gap down, but every day it's kind of met with buying intraday after this gap down, and a lot of blue skies there to the left if we get over this area that we marked here as resistance. And XON, a strong move with a pullback to where it broke out. So that is our 10 longs and our 10 shorts. So what I'll do is I'll just open this up to question. We actually just ticked over the hour mark, so I'm very proud of myself keeping this in or near an hour. That's a good day's work for tomorrow. So again, if there are any questions, I know that from what I'm saying and what you're hearing, there's up to a minute delay. So I'm just going to kind of chill out here. If there are any questions, type them down there. Let me know. If not, I will just call it a day. Take my short day and get ready for tomorrow. So I guess I'll just do my little plug rambling. Below the video, if you want to try out Trade Ideas, there's links down below there to check it out. If you trade through Interactive Brokers, they've actually opened an auto trading bot already that you can just plug right into Interactive Brokers. If not, the one that I use is I'm partnered with a prop firm that is basically accepting anybody outside of America, because the American regulatory environment is just a nightmare. We fund the traders fully. You pay a small training fee, and then you pay for the data you use, which is under, I think it's about $50 a month, give or take. And I do the training, and we have a little room that everyone chats in, and then we fund your trading directly. And that is, the whole fee, right? So a training fee, and then we start you out and you're trading entirely firm capital, and then we split the profits. So that's the bot I'm building. It's almost done. I want to say that it's very close. I've been saying that for a while. It seems like in programming, nothing takes just the amount of time you think it will. Also below that's my email where you can reach out to me for the prop firm. I do paid one-on-one mentoring as well. So you can reach out to me for that, and we can chat more. I do a lot of, this is how I build an algo, that type of stuff. I'll also just do trading psychology. I'd say both of those are my areas of expertise, so you can reach out to me there. Out of all the tickers you have unlocked, which one do you believe has the most range potential? The highest range, probably Tiffany's, to be honest. Just sticking out. A, it's got a $2 average true range anyway, but B, it's if this thing starts going, I could see it testing the high from this spike, which is about $2 away, which is about the average true range as well. Really, I don't try to concern myself too much with potential. I try to concern myself more with risk. So that's basically what I'm eyeballing more than anything else, is what is the potential risk. So other question, do you filter out big spreads? What's your max? I don't like anything over like 4 or 5 cents. Again, with Trade Ideas, there's just a simple spread filter that you can filter by. Mainly how I do it is every scan that we've scanned through tonight required that it traded about 1 million shares on Friday. So I'm not going to see a lot of stuff that has trades with generally high spreads. So although it's impossible to know 100%, you can't really judge even the spread filter. It will trigger if the spreads are tight then, even if they open up again. So the best way to protect yourself from spreads is stay away from things that do under a certain amount, depending on what you want. I like about the million mark. I think you could go as low as 500,000 and still be fine. That's your best way to protect yourself from spreads and slippage, is just trade something that trades enough that you're not going to get burned. I honestly think that if you're discretionary trading, you can get away with bigger spreads. But again, for me, the robot just puts out a limit order, a stop loss, a profit target. It's very it's very simple. It's the nuances, I guess, robots are bad at. The emotionless kind of doing the right thing over and over again, they're great at, but that little nuance thing they're not so good at. So Roy says, great point, thanks. Again, the only thing you can ever control in this game is your mentality and your risk, your mindset and your risk, and that's what you have to go into every trade doing, right? An amateur trader goes in and thinks about how much money they can make. A professional trader goes in and thinks about how much money they can lose. And I think that's hugely important. I used to mentor with this trader, and he always talked about every time he pushed the button enter a trade, he assumed in his mind that he was going to get stopped out. The theory being that, you're preparing yourself mentally for the stop outs that when they come, they're a lot easier just to punch out of. Again, with this trading strategy, you guys can go back through the videos, but I'm batting maybe a 60% win rate if I'm lucky. But still, on that win rate, I can have a great day because I manage all of the losses so tight, and all of the winners, I let them go so loose. And again, it's the old adage, but it is, if there is a holy grail of trading, it is, let the winners run and cut the losers when they just aren't working. You can be right 40% of the time in this game and make a fair amount of money if you're very diligent about never letting one stock be a big loss, right? What's my favorite alert for discretionary trading? I don't really discretionary trade anymore, to be honest. I've got the robot running these. I've got the robot running some 100% automated algorithms that have no intervention from me. And other than that, I basically just monitor. I'm basically just taking a look at it. Now, if I was discretionary trading, I would probably have a high volume alert, which in TradeID is very easy to do. You just look for 1 minute volume spikes. I would probably spend my day scanning through stuff like that to see if there's something that kind of looks like it could get going and starting to get some volume picking up. People are getting interested. I think I would look at something like that. But for myself, I'm just not nearly as good kind of in the thick of it as I am doing stuff like this and letting the robot do it. So more and more and more, I'm kind of relinquishing all control. So yeah, for me, I would take a look at big volume spikes intraday. See, one of the best things you can grab intraday is something that news is starting to come in, but say you're getting it before it even hits the high of the day. You get a very clean stop, and quite quickly when you're wrong, and the potential for a large move is very high. But again, just not my style. I think it's very important that when you find something that is working for you in this market, is you push that edge, right? You play to that strength as hard as you can. So any more questions? Let's type them through now. I don't know how many people are here. I looked and we had near 10 at one point. So any of you guys, let me know if you have any questions. Also, obviously, there's the email below for any sort of questions if you don't want them answered kind of live. I do a pretty good job. I think I'm getting better at answering emails when they come in. So let me know. And again, if not, I'm going to just hang out for another minute or so, and if there's no questions, I'll take off. If I've got the time tomorrow after the trading, we can do another little wrap-up and go from there. So, how good do you believe the Smart Stop is the question. I believe the Smart Stop is pretty damn good. I believe your eye is going to be better. I believe the Smart Stop is a good metric. But again, it all depends on your setup, right? A stop, in theory, should be placed dependent on the chart. We're still working with the bot to make it so that it is, so that the stop, basically the stop, you could say, the high of the day or the high of the last 15 minutes or something like that. So It was so I believe it's a good kind of indicator. It's a good guide. If you're trying to get away with a 10-cent stop on something that says, the smart stop should be 75 cents, it should give you kind of pause. It should give you a chance to double check. But I don't think you should go 100% off of that unless you're doing a 100% automated type strategy. So it's a good metric, but for discretionary trading, I think your eye is going to be a little bit better. I skipped past Merck. I don't even remember seeing Merck. I don't see anything in Merck, to be honest. It hasn't really done anything of interest. Kind of up near, I guess, this resistance, but looking at it intraday, you're talking from the kind of this high to this low is 20 cents. So it doesn't really move very much, and it's kind of really choppy intraday. One tip that I'll always give you when you're scanning the market is try to make your stocks more extraordinary than that. It's hard because this part of what the bot does intraday is very, very rule based, very, very robotic, that kind of stuff. I'm not adverse to high float stocks myself. It has nothing to do with that. It's just that my eye didn't see anything. So maybe that's a horrible answer, but when I look at something like CPB, right? That stock has done more. It's more of a unusual look, I guess might be a good way to put it. And if it looks unusual, it means a lot of people will look at it. You want to avoid stocks that are just kind of meandering around as per usual. They get a lot more caught up by kind of the high frequency side of things. Whereas stocks like CBB that are more unusual in nature can have a more a harsher reaction, I guess, if that makes any sense. Why do many scans defer to 75 cents? 75 cents is the maximum smart stop, Roy. So that's why you must be looking for, if your scans are finding everything that's 75 cents, you're looking for incredibly high volatility names. And the smart stop just caps out at 75 cents. That's, it has a minimum of 25 cents and it has a maximum of 75 cents. So it's got nothing, that's not a magic number or anything. It just means that the smart stop is probably actually significantly higher than 75 cents, but that's just where it caps. Next question, how would you scan for stocks highly traded by HFT? Just look for stocks that do over 5 million shares a day. All of those are going to be attacked by the HFTs more. I don't think HFTs are a bad thing. I have a bit of a insight on how they exactly work. I worked with hedge funds for 10 years. They're not evil. They're not hunting for your stops. They don't know any of that, nor do they care, right? I don't know how many times I've heard, how do you trade in this world of HFTs where they know where you put your stops and they go after them? But I'm sorry, a $10 billion hedge fund could not give less of a shit about your stop for 500 shares. Just could not care in any way, shape, or form. So they're not evil, they're not out to get you, but how you find them is you just look for stocks that don't move much and have a high volume. So I'd say anything over 5 million shares is probably going to get attacked pretty hard by the HFTs. So hope that makes sense, but don't. I know the moment anyone mentions HFTs, you get a lot of traders that are new or struggling, and they want to blame that for what's going on. But I don't care either way, right? If I see a stock that does 10 million shares, but it trades cleanly and smoothly, like, I don't know, Facebook, right? If I was a discretionary trader, I would be looking at Facebook a lot because it trades kind of smoothly, I guess you could say, right? So, 20, 30 cent moves one way or the other, you know you're going to get filled on both sides, and you know there's some movement there. But I bet you $1 billion, there's, you know, every HFT firm in the world is trading on Facebook because it's a lot easier for them to do deals, right? But yeah, so just high float, high volume is where the HFTs are going to live, and even if it's not average volume, I guarantee you these low float things that people think are the best stocks out there are still going to get hit up by the HFTs when they really start kind of printing hard. Because the HFTs, their only concern is liquidity, right? They're trying to buy the bid and sell the ask over and over and over again forever. So yeah, they're just big on volume. That's the best way to put it. So. All right, so we'll open it up for questions a bit more. If there are any, let me know, and if not, we'll call it a night. And stay tuned to Twitter, or just hang out here around 4 Eastern time. And if I'm on, it'll go live, and if not, that's if you don't want to follow me on the Twitters, or if you don't have it or whatever. Also, I don't know, but I think if you're subscribed to the channel, it sends you a little alert when I go live. In which case you can just do that. I usually go live and then, you know, set a song to play or something to give people 5 minutes or so to kind of open it up and load it up and get ready to go. So hopefully that helps, I guess. But I'm going to take off here, guys. So enjoy the rest of your evening. Be safe out there tomorrow. We're in a very choppy, low volatility environment, but there's a lot of news floating out there in the States. So just be careful. Have all your stops in place. If something breaks one way or the other, it could cause kind of a big move. So be careful. All right, guys. I will possibly see you tomorrow. If not, at least one more time through the rest of the week. So trade safe, guys.